Welcome to the How to Become a Solicitor via the SQE Route. Today we are going to talk through a few things in regards to the SQE, but before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. Just to let you know that this session is going to be recorded, and afterwards we are going to send the slides over and also the recording of the webinar. You should receive that via email by the end of next week at the latest, hopefully a little bit sooner. So keep an eye out for that, and if you haven't received it by next Friday, then please do check your junk mail. Just to make you aware that if anyone needs it, the closed captions, you can turn them on. There should be a button, I believe it's at the bottom of your screen. And in regards to the chat box, please feel free to say hi in there. If anyone wants to connect on LinkedIn, then feel free to share your profile. And also, if you've got any questions as we go along, if you post them in there, there will be a chance for us to answer them at the end. I've also got Nicola in the background, who's my manager. You'll see her popping up occasionally, and she's just going to share some really useful links for you guys. But if you don't have a chance to click on the links throughout the session, then we are going to include them in the email, the follow-up email that we send out. There'll be a resources section, so don't worry too much if you don't have a chance throughout the webinar today. Okay. Now, lastly, before we move on, please get your phones ready. There are a couple of QR codes throughout the webinar that will be useful for you to scan. So if you're not actually attending the webinar on your mobile, get them ready so that you can follow the links via the QR codes, and some really useful resources that are definitely worth checking out. Okay, so quick introductions. I'm Sydney. I'm the Student Recruitment Officer at the college, and I basically oversee the journey of prospective students from the initial interest up to signing up to a programme with the college. And recently I've also started working with a couple of different university law societies, and I'm going to support them with events and fairs. I also might have had a couple of conversations with you or exchanged some emails. So that's me. And we are also joined by the lovely Kathryn today, who is the programme leader for the LLM in legal practice, as well as a module leader and supervisor for many of the modules that we have too. So she'll be talking you through all things SQE today. So what are we going to cover? I'm going to start off with just a quick introduction of who the College of Legal Practice are. Hopefully it'll give you a bit of faith that we know what we're talking about today. And then we're going to move on to the SQE route to qualification. We're also going to touch on the SQE1 and SQE2 assessments to give you that extra insight. We'll also touch on the qualifying work experience. I know that we had quite a few questions submitted upon registration regarding qualifying work experience, so hopefully you'll have some clarity on that by the end of this webinar. And we're also going to discuss the SQE pathways and the prep courses that we offer very briefly, and we'll briefly touch on funding options as well. And then, as I mentioned before, there will be an opportunity to ask any questions and answer some of your questions at the end of the webinar too. So first of all, when it comes to the college, we are basically a fully online postgraduate law school, and all of our courses are solely online, and we specialise in SQE preparation. Our parent company is the College of Law in Australia, and they are the leaders in legal education in Australia. So in total, we do have 25 years of digital learning experience. So when it comes to our ethos, just to give you a better idea, we are all about accessibility and affordability when it comes to online courses, and we provide individual and personal targeted support while you are studying. Now, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, the legal sector, it is traditionally known for being a profession with many barriers, and so we're just aiming to do our bit to try and eliminate some of those by offering courses at an affordable price. And then lastly, we aim to provide an inclusive learning environment for those that do our courses, just ensuring that reasonable adjustments are in place for those that need it, and it just gives everyone the opportunity to make the most out of their learning. And here is a quick snapshot of just some of the people that we work with. So basically, we just deliver our SQE prep modules as part of these partnerships with firms and some education providers. Okay. So obviously you're here because you are considering becoming a solicitor, but for any of you that are at an early stage of deciding whether or not this profession is right for you, then this guide is ideal. We've had lots of positive feedback. It basically brings together really useful advice, some tips, some experiences from experienced and newly qualified solicitors, and along with graduate recruitment professionals. So it's definitely worth having a read. It's a really useful resource to check out, just to help give you an idea as to whether or not this might be the right profession for you. Okay. But now I'm going to pass you over to the lovely Kathryn, who is going to talk you through what the SQE is.
Thank you, Sydney. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming along today. We're going to talk about the SQE route as the route to qualifying as a solicitor. And Sydney's going to just take us through the slides as we go. So as a preliminary, the SQE is, of course, the Solicitor's Qualification Exam route, which replaces the LPC route to qualifying. So the LPC route was a linear pathway to qualification where you did your degree, you did the LPC, you then had to get a training contract. The SQE route is slowly but surely replacing that so that it will soon be the only pathway to qualification. And the route is more flexible than the linear route which was previously available. So it's necessary for everyone to have a degree or the equivalent of a degree. Pretty much that means having a degree. You then have to pass SQE1 and SQE2, and those are national exams so that everybody sits the same exams through the Kaplan, who are appointed by the SRA. Everybody will have to have qualifying work experience, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then the final piece of the pathway in this qualification route is to be a person who is suitable to be a solicitor. That's unchanged from the LPC route, actually. That requirement for suitability has always been there. So key differences here: degree doesn't have to be a law degree, although pretty tall job if you don't have a law degree. So there are conversion routes, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then those national exams, and alongside that, the qualifying work experience. So that's what the route entails, those 4 parts of the jigsaw. And what we're going to do now is move on and talk in a little bit more detail in respect of the actual pathway in terms of the SQE exams. So here at the college, we run preparatory programs for SQE1 and for SQE2. So starting with SQE1, I've already mentioned that it's a national exam. It's a national exam that tests functioning legal knowledge. The level at which the knowledge is being tested is as a day 1 qualified solicitor. So that's very different from LPC exams. It's as if you are qualified. And the knowledge is tested across 13 practice areas. And those 13 practice areas are core subjects that you would have studied on an LLB, and also cover LPC compulsory subjects as well. So it's a very broad syllabus. There's no optionality. You have to study all of the 13 practice areas. And then you're tested via a single best answer multiple choice question exam. That style of exam is common to other professional exams. They are designed to be taxing, because obviously they're an entry to qualifying as a solicitor. And the style of question, which we'll have a look at in a moment, is a style whereby there's a single best answer, but you have 5 options to choose from, and all of them are plausible options. So you have to develop the ability to be able to recall your knowledge, apply it to the scenario so that you choose the best answer in a limited period of time, because you will be doing 90 questions in a sitting. You've got about 1 minute 40 seconds to answer a question, and the first sitting is in the morning of one day, the second sitting is in the afternoon of that same day, and then you will repeat that again for the other practice areas. So 4 sessions over 2 days, 10 hours of multiple choice question exams. So quite a big ask, quite a big shift in the style of learning and the skills you'll have done in previous exams, I imagine. And you'll be sitting those exams at a Pearson VUE test centre, and the SRA run the SQE exams twice a year, once in January, once in July, and currently the fees are as stated there, £1,888. So those are your key facts in respect of the SQE1. And we're going to just have a look at the anatomy of an SQE1 type question. So on the screen now, you can see the style of an MCQ question in the SQE1. So there are 3 parts to it. The first part is the STEM. That's the scenario set out in the text at the beginning. The second part is a direct question. And then the third part is 5 options. And just for a bit of fun, we've put symbols by the options. So let's have a look at the style of the question. We're not necessarily looking at the knowledge. What I'm doing here is demonstrating the style of the question. So if we think about the content here, the scene setting, we have the sale of a bulldog. So one person wanting to sell their French bulldog to another person. And then they get into a dispute over the amount of money that is going to be paid for this bulldog. So on the face of it, what it looks like is a question about contract. And what it asks you is there a binding contract? But actually, part of the skill when you do these SQE MCQs is to think about what is it that is encompassed in making a contract binding that is actually being tested in this question. And we've got lots of options there, so I'll give you a moment to have a think. We've got yes, because the seller's too late. No, because £100 isn't adequate consideration. Yes, because consideration has to be sufficient but not adequate. Yes, because the relevant factor is that the neighbour will give the dog a good home. And no, because this is an example of past consideration. So just have a think about that for a moment. At least nominally apply one of those symbols to select your answer. And then we will move on and have a look at the answer that is actually correct. Lovely, thank you for some of you dropping your answers into the text, into the chat bar. Got a few things floating up here. Lovely. Thank you. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot about this, but what we are going to do is move on and just have a look at the answer. And so, Sydney, if you move on that slide, we have the answer is the heart. Many of you did choose the heart, and what you selected was an answer which was directed to the principle of consideration. So obviously we know that we've got invitations to treat, acceptance, we have a requirement for a consideration, all of those elements being part of forming a binding contract. And what you did by selecting the heart was quite rightly zone in on and focus in on that the question was about consideration. And that skill of identifying what the actual particular relevance of the question is the skill you develop as you go on to progress through an SQE preparation course. What I'd just like to pause here and just mention is that you can see that there is some feedback next to this correct answer. That feedback is the style of feedback we give on our questions. That reference that you can see there, the numeric reference, directs our students back into manuals that we give to each student, and the reference is to a specific part of the manual. And that way you can keep focused each time and develop your skills towards answering an MCQ question. So that's the anatomy of a single best answer MCQ question. There are no published past papers from the SRA, but the SRA do publish some sample questions, but those are the only questions which are in the public domain. If we move on then and have a look at the SQE2, which is what you're looking at on this slide now, the SQE2 is a move on from the SQE1, and it's a prerequisite to pass SQE1 before you can attempt SQE2. The SQE2 exam is aimed at testing your legal skills in the context of certain legal practice areas. So the SQE2 exam is an examination that is 50% on skills and 50% on content. The practice areas narrow down from the 13 in SQE1, and the practice areas here are business, dispute resolution, property, crime, and wills. And the skills are the type of skills that you that if you're familiar with the LPC, you'll know about. So it's advocacy, case matter analysis coupled with and then client interviewing and writing an attendance note, legal drafting, legal research, and legal writing. There are various permutations of all those skills and all of those practice areas, resulting in an SQE2 assessment which has 16 elements. The 16 elements are called stations. 12 of them are written, 4 of them are oral, and those are offered 4 times a year in January, April, July, and October. The written exams can be done worldwide in a centre booked by the SRA. The oral exams must be done in the UK. Currently, they're being offered in Cardiff, Manchester, London, and Birmingham. You can't cherry pick your stations. You must do all of them, and you must do all 16 stations in one sitting. It's one exam with 16 elements. What that also means is that if you're not successful in the exam, you have to resit the whole exam. So obviously it's high stakes. You want to be as well prepared as you possibly can be when you commit to the SQE2 exam, particularly bearing in mind that those SQE2 fees are shown there, just short of £3,000. And as I say, you'll want to make sure that you feel confident when you're making that kind of commitment to take those exams. So those are the SQE2 key facts. I'm now going to move to the qualifying work experience, which is one of the elements of the SQE pathway. So qualifying work experience replaces the training contract. The SRA have very much opened up this aspect of becoming qualified as a solicitor. So they still want people who enter the profession to have had experience in the legal work environment. The title qualifying work experience signals that it's the individual's responsibility to get the type of work that exposes them to the practice of legal skills. So rather than you having firms which offer training contracts, there will be various positions in various firms which you can apply for, and you will have to keep a record of your qualifying work experience. The good news is that it is very much wider in terms of where you're able to actually obtain this qualifying work experience. So you can do it in the voluntary sector, you can do it in-house legal work, you can do private practice legal work, you can even do legal work overseas. The requirement that you have as somebody wishing to qualify is that you document your qualifying work experience, and that you are in contact with somebody who is prepared to sign off your record of qualifying work experience. You can do your qualifying work experience at a number of institutions, up to 4 different organisations, and there's no minimum or maximum length for the time you spend in an organisation. So it really is very, very much more flexible than the training contract. It's flexible in terms of where you can do it, as I've described. It's also flexible in terms of when you can do it. And as Sydney will explain a little bit later, you can do your qualifying work experience before you do any SQE exams. You can do it alongside studying for your SQE exams. You can do it after you've studied for your SQE exams. So there's lots of optionality there for you. And this is a very much more flexible experience than you would have encountered under the old LPC plus training contract route. Just one final note on this before we move on. You will still hear people using and organisations using the expression training contract, but it no longer signals a training contract of the style that used to be required under the LPC route. It's just that some organisations are requiring their employees to undergo training under a contract with that organisation. But qualifying work experience is the technical term for the SQE pathway to qualify as a solicitor. Okay, and that brings me to my final part, which is to speak to you a little bit about our approach to helping you pass the SQE. So as Sydney mentioned, my role at the college is as a programme leader, and that programme is an LLM programme within which we run the SQE preparatory modules. So in the they are compulsory modules for the LLM, but you can also study the SQE modules as standalone modules. Whichever style you opt for, we approach your learning on the SQE preparatory modules in a flexible way. We have our learning content in our learning platform, so you are guided through how to use the learning content. We support you as you go through that independent learning on the learning content with town hall meetings, which are where we just guide you as to what's coming up, the skills you need to be aiming at. And we support you with surgeries where we have subject matter experts talking to you about certain elements of those 13 practice areas. The personal supervision is aimed at supporting you as an individual, not in terms of supervising your learning, but in terms of supervising your engagement and progression. So the responsibility for your learning rests with you, but as you come to your meetings with your personal supervisors, they will speak to you about your engagement and will give you tips if you are, for example, needing tips on catching up or speeding up, and also talking to you about your progression through the module in terms of your attainments. We give you lots of opportunity for practice at MCQ style questions. You will do progress tests, so practice assessments as you go. Those progress tests give us data about your progression and performance, and we are able to then enter into discussion with you about your readiness to attempt the SQE. It's a really good benchmark. Those practice assessments, those progress tests provide us with a really good benchmark of being able to guide you as to your readiness. We give you all of the materials in soft copy on Canvas, but we also give you hard copy manuals. All of the learning activities are in soft copy on Canvas. Sydney's already mentioned the value and the affordability compared with others in the market. Of course, if you have a disability and need reasonable adjustments, we will be able to look at adjustments for you for our study. We operate, however, because we're online, on the basis of accessibility by design, and therefore we're making adjustments where the design itself doesn't fit with reasonable adjustments needed. So typically what that will mean is that if you need extra time, we would apply extra time for the progress test so that you are able to judge your performance with the benefit of extra time. We would also very strongly encourage you to get in touch with the SRA, because the SRA can make adjustments for your SQE exam. There's mention there of excellent student feedback and satisfaction rates. That always makes us feel good as part of the academic team. But we say hand on heart that our student feedback, when students tell us about their experience of sitting the SQE exam, is that they felt well prepared by the materials that were made available. That concludes my part for now. I'm going to hand you back to Sydney, and Sydney's going to talk about some of the learning pathways under our LLM programme for you.
Thank you, Kathryn. Okay, brilliant. So this is just to give you an idea of what route might be best for you when pursuing the SQE. So first of all, an example is that you absolutely want to become a solicitor and you're just wanting to get your study out of the way. Some people do prefer that. So in that scenario, it might be that you just crack straight on with the SQE1 preparation. You sit the SQE1 and then SQE2 prep, sit the SQE2, and then afterwards you focus on gaining your qualifying work experience. As Kathryn mentioned briefly, there's no time constraints on qualifying work experience. So some people prefer to do the study and the exams and then focus on getting a role within the legal sector. And there we've also, on these diagrams, we've also included that you could do our full-time LLM in legal practice, just to give you an idea of how it could look if you didn't want to do the standalone SQE prep courses and you're wanting to do the LLM, so it gives you that insight. It might be that you need to study while you work. This is the case for, I would say, majority of our students. Most people that Nicola and I speak to, they are working on a full-time basis and they are wanting flexible study around their work. And so as you can see there, you would study on a part-time basis for the SQE and you would sit them at available opportunities, or you might be doing the part-time LLM in legal practice. And then you're going to work alongside it, ideally within the legal sector, so you are accruing that qualifying work experience. And then once you pass the SQE, you can always backdate your work experience when you're submitting everything to the SRA. And then lastly, it might be that you're not sure if being a solicitor is for you. Your law degree might have put you off. No judgment here, but in that scenario, we would definitely recommend securing a legal role and start gaining that qualifying work experience. Getting a taster of whether or not becoming a solicitor is definitely something that you're wanting to do. And then if so, fantastic, you can look at starting your SQE preparation after that. And just like the pathway previously, you can work alongside that. Okay, so that is hopefully going to give you an idea of how you might want to plan your journey. So for those of you that are just coming out of university, it can help give you an idea of what you want to do. Or if people are looking at changing careers, it might be better for you to, still work within your current role, but do the SQE preparation alongside it to increase your employability chances to get into the legal sector. It doesn't necessarily have to be qualifying work experience while you study, but if it can be, then fantastic. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into what it could look like for you. Now, moving on, we get quite a few questions about how people can successfully pass the SQE. So we've just put together a couple of tips. So these are some things that we would recommend you consider. So firstly, and I would probably say most importantly, is that you need to find an SQE preparation course that suits you and also your other commitments. So for example, if you are working, if you have family commitments, social commitments, things like that, it's really important that you find a preparation course that is flexible around that, whether that's an online course or it might be that you want to study in person. So you need to find an education establishment with a campus. It's just really important that you do dedicate that time to find a course that's best for you. Nicola is going to post a link in the chat. We do have a webpage and it just helps you determine choosing the right course for you, mainly specifically with our courses, but it might also give you an idea of what to consider when you are at that stage of your journey. Secondly, legal work experience. Statistically, those that are working within the legal sector, they are more likely to pass the SQE on their first attempt, and qualifying work experience, it can be quite hard to obtain. Not impossible, but it can be quite hard for some, depending on the roles available in their area and where they're looking. So it might be that some of you choose to prioritise getting a legal role before you pursue the SQE, because it might also help you pass. But there are people that don't work within the legal sector that have managed to successfully pass the SQE. I just need to say that as a disclaimer, and they have successfully got a role afterwards. It's just that if you can, it's definitely worth trying to pursue that initially. Okay. The third thing that we really try and drill into our inquirers is that you need to set realistic timelines. So you need to take as much time as necessary to adequately prepare. Don't put unnecessary pressure on yourself and rush the process. So for example, with our courses, we offer a 40-week course. It's our longest course. It's 8 to 10 hours of study each week. And if you are working full-time and have family or social commitments, we would probably recommend that you do the 40-week course. It does mean that you might have to wait 6 months to sit the SQE1 at the next available sitting. However, if it's going to allow you enough time to dedicate necessary hours to your revision and your study, it's going to increase your chances to pass the SQE1 first time around, or SQE2 first time around. And then in the long run, it's going to save you time and money, because you're not going to have to worry about resits and you'll have adequately prepared initially. So make sure you don't put any pressure on yourself, and you do set realistic timelines, because it's important that when you're studying, you're also looking after your well-being. If people need some TikTok time, make sure you allow that in your weekly plan, things like that. Okay, so this is mainly for SQE1, and it's really important is just practice as many multiple choice questions as you can. We gave you a taster, so it's just making sure you find those resources. Obviously in our course you get given a lot, but all of our students, they proactively say, and they always recommend that you do as many multiple choice questions as you can. Utilize the resources on the SRA website, and any other multiple choice questions they can get their hands on top of the 2,300 plus that we provide as well, because it's practice hopefully makes perfect, and it will manage your expectations going into the SQE1 and increase your chances of passing again. And then lastly, this is a special mention for anyone here that hasn't done a law degree, or you might be transferring from another jurisdiction. We would always recommend completing a conversion course before you go on to start your SQE1 preparation. And the reason for this is because it helps you gain a good understanding of the 6 foundation areas of law in England and Wales specifically, and therefore it helps massively when you go on to start your SQE preparation course. It's not a requirement, as Kathryn touched on. You just need an undergraduate degree or equivalent. So it isn't a requirement that you need this, but statistically, those that have come from a non-law background, or those that are transferring from another jurisdiction, those that do a conversion course, they are more likely to pass the SQE1 first time around when sitting, because they have that background knowledge that they then build on as part of the SQE prep. Okay. So definitely consider all of those things. I'm now going to move on to our courses. So it's a good segue from the conversion course. The one that we offer is a graduate diploma in law. We offer a full-time course, which is a 20-week option, and you're looking at 30 to 35 hours of study each week. And then we also offer a part-time course, which runs for 40 weeks in total, and you are looking at 20 hours of study each week. Usually when I have conversations with people, we are recommending the part-time course. And I guess one of the biggest pro of our GDL in comparisons to other on the market is that ours only runs for 40 weeks. So you're still managing to gain that qualification in a shorter amount of time than you might elsewhere. Okay, and for 2025, all these fees are for 2025. You're looking at £3,950. So all of the fees here, they are subject to increase in line with inflation. Hopefully they're not going to increase that much. We do our best to keep them affordable, but just in case, I thought I'd pop that in there. Now moving on, we have our SQE1 preparation course. We call it Solicitors Legal Knowledge, because that's what you're going to be assessed on as part of SQE1. And again, we offer full-time and part-time options. So our full-time course is 13 weeks. It's 30 to 35 hours per week. And we would not recommend this if you are working full-time, potentially even part-time, because it's such an intensive course. That's mainly for those that don't really have that many commitments. And then we have our part-time course, which is the 20 weeks. In comparison, it's only 15 to 20 hours of study each week. So that might be better for those that are working part-time, but have a lower family responsibility or commitment, and maybe don't have many commitments outside of work. Then that's when you'd be looking at the 20-week course. And then we have our extended part-time, which is the 40-week course. So that's 8 to 10 hours of study each week, and that's if you are working full-time or have a high level of commitments. That would be the perfect course for you. Or if you're just wanting to take your time and want to give yourself the most time to actually revise with the materials, again, we would say the 40-week course for anyone that isn't in a rush. And for 2025, that fee for the SQE1 prep is 2,200. Moving on, the SQE2 prep, again, full-time and part-time options. The study hours are the same. However, our SQE2 prep on a full-time basis only runs for 10 weeks, and that is £2,700. And then lastly, we have our LLM in legal practice, and this actually includes our SQE1 and SQE2 preparation courses. Again, full-time and part-time options, 1 year for full-time, and you'd be looking at 30 to 35 hours of study each week. And then we've got a 2-year course, a part-time option, which is 15 to 20 hours, and that is £7,245. We did get a couple of questions through when you were registering asking about the LLM in more detail. So when it comes to the question section, Kathryn is going to elaborate on that for you. But just for now, I would like to signpost you to our course and programme demos on the next slide. But before I do, Nicola should have posted a link to our course calendar. So for anyone that is interested in applying for any of these courses, go to our course calendar, and there are start dates for the courses, and there's also application deadlines that are really useful for you to have a look at if you are interested. Okay. Now, this is a QR code for our course and programme demos. Nicola's also going to post a link for this in the chat as well. And this will give you an idea of what it's like to learn at the college. So you'll be able to see the online student portal, and we have the module leaders just talking through and clicking through to help give you an idea of what you will be using when studying with us and what you'll be working through. So it's a really useful tool to go and have a look, and it'll just help you give a feel for whether or not college is a good fit for you. Okay. And then lastly, just before we take some of your questions and answer some of the questions that have been submitted, I'm just going to talk through funding opportunities quite quickly. If you scan that QR code, it does take you to our funding page. But first of all, with the LLM, and only with the LLM, so this isn't, the GDL isn't eligible for a student loan, a postgraduate student loan from Student Finance. Neither are the standalone SQE1 or SQE2 preparation courses. It's only for the master's qualification. You can apply for a student loan from Student Finance, given that you are eligible for it, given that you meet their criteria. And our LLM is actually really quite popular because with the postgraduate loan, it's for sort of 12,000 plus. Our LLM is only £7,245, but you'll still get the full loan amount. So our LLM is popular because people actually use the whole postgraduate funding for our LLM and also to pay for the SQE assessments. So it kind of eases that financial pressure, if you like, if you do the LLM. However, not the academic pressure. We always say that if you're doing the LLM, your focus needs to be the LLM, not so much the SQE assessments. That's just an added bonus. And it is a very intensive course. So if you do decide to do our master's qualification, the motivation should really be for the qualification rather than for the funding aspect. So for that reason, in case the LLM isn't the right fit for you, we do offer interest-free instalments. So Nicola's going to post the course fee schedule for what those interest-free instalments would typically look like. But basically, it's split over 3, usually starting with a £150 non-refundable deposit. And then the remaining fee is split into 2 payments, one before you start your course and one halfway through. Unless it's the LLM, in which case it's split up into more. It's broken up into more because the course fee is so much larger in comparison to the standalone courses. However, if you want to request alternative payment options, that you can do that after you've applied. It just needs to be that the full fee for the course is paid by the halfway part of your study. Another option for those of you that might be working in the legal sector or that are going to gain some qualified work experience before pursuing the SQE route is employer funding. It might be that you want to have those conversations when you are looking to secure a role. And if you can get employer funding, then that's fantastic. And it can be partial employer funding, so they can pay X amount and you can pay the remaining fee. That is something that we accommodate. And then scholarships and schemes. So the college's SQE scholarships, this is only available for SQE1 prep, SQE2 prep and the LLM. The GDL doesn't fall under this, unfortunately. At present, it's not open. They open sort of every maybe 6 to 12 months, depending on funding and availability. We will open applications for our scholarships, but there is a specific criteria that you need to meet, and it is highly competitive. But for anyone that wants more information on that, that is on our website, so feel free to have a look. There are also other schemes available, like the Law Society Diversity Access Scheme, Birmingham Law Society, Aspiring Solicitors Foundation as well, and more information is on our website on the funding page about those as well. And then lastly, it might be that you want to look at securing an apprenticeship. For any of you that might have seen, we have recently brought in that we do graduate solicitor apprenticeships, which is fantastic. So for anyone considering those, please just be aware that you do need to have an employer in order to do our graduate solicitor apprenticeships, and it is your employer that would need that conversation with us, and they would be the ones to initially send the application. Okay, so that's it on the funding part, and now is the perfect opportunity for anyone to ask any questions. I can see that we have a few things in the chat. I'm not sure whether or not Nicola got round to answering any, but I'm just...
Nicola's done posts, all the posts you've mentioned.
Brilliant.
Sydney, there's a couple of questions that perhaps I can pick up now
Perfect.
before there's any other questions that you might have for me. The first question is whether you have to pass both SQE1 and SQE2 to obtain the LLM award. So just remember that the SQE1 exam and the SQE2 exam is run by Kaplan for the SRA. It's not part of the LLM pathway. So as Sydney said, you'll have, if you choose to do an LLM with us, you will do modular exams, which will get you academic credits to give you an LLM award. But the SQE1 and SQE2 exams are entirely separate to that, and they're run by Kaplan for the SRA. And that actually links to another question about the SQE course costs. The costs that you pay for your preparatory courses are costs that you pay to the College of Legal Practice or any other provider, but the SQE exam fees are payable to the SRA in order to sit them. So that's why we were making the point about the commitment for the SQE exams, and Sydney was talking about thinking realistically about your timing and when you're going to do the exams, because over the piece you'll be paying just short of £5,000 in exam fees to the SRA, purely to sit the SRA SQE exams. And if you don't pass on your first attempt, you will have to pay the full exam fees again on your second and subsequent attempt. While I'm here, I might as well mention that you have to pass SQE1 and SQE2 within 6 years of your first attempt at SQE1, and you're entitled to 3 attempts at SQE1 and 3 attempts at SQE2. So embarking on and committing to the exam, it's not something you want to do lightly. You want to feel prepared and ready to make that financial commitment. I think those are all the questions in the chat bar, Sydney. So we're now able to take up any others.
I have noticed that a couple of people have raised your hand. If you could possibly just type your questions in the chat, and then what we'll do is we can pick them up there. It just makes it a little bit easier rather than messing around with mic permissions and things like that. So any questions, please just pop them in there and that would be great. While you're typing those up, I do have a question for you, Kathryn, that did keep coming up when I was going through the registration report. I'm just having some tech issues. Bear with me one moment because I can't get it up.
While you're doing that, Sydney, I'll just mention the LLM structure and how that fits with the SQE exams. So the first point to make is that our LLM programs, as Sydney mentioned, are full-time and part-time, and the SQE preparatory modules are compulsory modules within those. You can only do on the LLM programs SQE prep courses that are full-time or part-time, so not the 40-week courses. They're not available as part of an LLM program. Whether you start on the full-time or the part-time, you will start on SQE1 prep, so you'll do the SLK module. The module will end typically about a month prior to the SQE1 exam. So for example, those students who started our SQE courses part-time in August this year will finish in December, and the that's aligned to SQE1 for for January 2025. For those who started on the full-time LLM, again, they started in September and will finish in December, again aligned to attempting the SQE1 in January. So for LLM study, there is a gap in at the end of each SLK module on the LLM. In order to attempt SQE1, if that's what you choose to do, you then pick up the other elements of the LLM, which are 2 transactional modules, which are studying for a specialist area of practice. And then you move on to SLS, which is the SQE2 preparatory module. And you also do a dissertation module, which is independent research based on literature review, to complete the whole of the LLM program.
Thank you. That was actually perfect timing, because it was a question about studying for the SQE integrated with the LLM. So psychic as well as a law whiz, what do you know?
So just really important to make the point that when you embark on the LLM, you're not committed to do the SQE exams, because the SQE exams you book independently with the SRA. So it's a matter for you as to whether or not you choose to do them as you're doing your LLM. What I would say, though, again, related to that point that Sydney made about thinking about your preparedness, the SRA will examine you in your SQE exams on current law, which means that the longer the period of time between your study and your attempts at the SQE exams, the higher the risk to you that your content that you've studied becomes even slightly out of date. Because slightly out of date law is a dangerous thing. So you just need to think about aligning yourself so that if you're wanting to do the SQE exams, you think about your timing of that.
Thank you. I can see that we've got a couple of other questions through. So we've been asked whether or not the GDL is a must before someone goes on to do the SQE. The short answer is no, it isn't a requirement, but it would be highly recommended, just so that you do have that background knowledge in the foundation areas of law in England and Wales. It is going to help you in the long run when it comes to successfully passing the SQE. So it isn't a must, but it would be strongly recommended. But as long as you meet entry requirements for preparation courses, whether
probably
that's
helpful, isn't it, Sydney, to think of the GDL as a law degree equivalent. So
yeah,
that's where the help is.
yes.
It puts you on the level playing field as someone with a law degree.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully that answers your question. We've also got another question through. As an international student, do I require a student visa to enroll on the SQE preparation courses? No, you don't, because we're online, because we're an online course provider. You don't need a visa to study with us. We wouldn't sponsor a visa, and you can travel from anywhere in the world. The only thing that I would say to be mindful of as an international student is maybe the time difference. If you are wanting to attend any of the classes, we call them surgeries and town hall meetings, if you're wanting to attend those live, then you will need to account for the time difference, and also just make sure that you are checking and have a clear understanding of when the deadlines for work is on the online student portal as well, so that you're not missing any submissions or to try and avoid late submissions. So it's perfectly doable. We do have an international students FAQ page that Nicholas just shared in the chat, so you can have a look at that, and it's really useful. Moving on
Also,
to,
sorry, Sydney,
oh,
just
sorry.
also worth adding there, just a pointer that while the materials are online on the learning platform for you to do at a time that's convenient to you, all of our scheduled contact meetings which happen in a Zoom meeting like this, they all take place during the UK working week, Monday to Friday. But all of those sessions are recorded if you're not able to attend in those actual live times.
Yeah, and it's probably worth mentioning as well that the UK times it's typically 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday, but we have a lot of working professionals that do the SQE preparation courses, so they are recorded, and we have had students that have studied with us and not attended live, and that's been absolutely fine for them because they've still followed the structure of our course. So our courses are flexible in the sense that when you dedicate the study hours around your commitments is up to you, but you really should be dedicating, say, the 15 to 20 hours of study each week. Otherwise, there is a risk of falling behind. So to get the most out of the course, then you should still be doing the hours. But with the GDL, it is best for anyone considering the GDL, if you are international, it is best if you are attending those workshops live. They are 2-hour long workshops, so there is a difference between that course and our SQE preparation courses for that reason, because they are a lot longer, and we do strongly recommend attending those live even though they are recorded, so that you can have that interaction with your supervisor and ask relevant questions, which will help obviously when it comes to securing your diploma and passing it at the end. So moving on to the next question, we've been asked, can someone qualify with a master's degree to enrol onto the LLM and SQE programs in the absence of a first degree? I believe so. So everyone that applies with us is assessed on a case-by-case basis. So you could submit an application and then our admissions team will review it. And I believe that a master's degree should be okay, but we can't confirm it just because we're not on the admissions team, and it does depend on the evidence that you submit. Okay.
I think I'd also add to that just to say that as a preliminary step, make inquiries of the SRA directly as to whether or not that would suffice for qualification on the pathway, because they will assess your eligibility to enter onto the role of solicitors. You want to make sure that you've covered off that preliminary point first.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point. Make sure you are checking those and making those inquiries. Another question that we've got through is, can I do the LLM part-time on a 40-hour basis? Unfortunately not. I don't know if you mean on the 40 weeks. So for example, with our prep courses, when you've got 40 weeks to do it, that isn't available for our LLM. It is just a standard 1 year, 30 to 35 hours of study, and then 2 years, which is part-time, which is 15 to 20 hours. And that isn't likely to change. They're just standard across the board. Now, I think we've got time for sort of one other question. So I'm just going to try and quickly whiz through some of the ones that were submitted when you registered. So someone asked whether or not the SQE route is the same for international qualified solicitors. You might be exempt. You can find more information on the SRA website, because you could be exempt from the SQE2 if you've been a practicing solicitor for X amount of years. And there's also a drop down where you can input your experience or input your qualifications, and it can give you an idea whether you're exempt for SQE2. Typically, it is SQE2 you will be exempt from, because that's the legal skills element rather than the legal knowledge element. What is the process of applying for the course? You apply via our website. Nicola can pop the link in there, and I'll also include that on the follow-up email that we send through to you over the next week. So for anyone that is interested, you can apply via that link there. And then what I'm going to do, because we are running out of time, and also sometimes questions come to you after you've attended a webinar and you think, oh, I should have asked that. If anyone thinks that they would benefit from a one-to-one chat with either myself or Nicola, then by all means book one in, or send us an email. We're more than happy to help, or you can always give us a call and we can chat through things in more detail for you. I think that the other thing that I'm just going to ask you to cover, Kathryn, really quickly is whether or not we help with securing qualifying work experience and what we offer.
Well, yeah. We're not in a position to support any qualifying work experience, but we are able to point you to organisations which can help you. There are various organisations that have placements available which you can apply for, which would mean that you are undertaking qualifying work experience. But as an organisation, we aren't able to offer qualifying work experience. Some other providers are. And what I would say though is if you have done placement on a voluntary basis in your university studies, sometimes those kind of placements can count as qualifying work experience. But typically, no, qualifying work experience is for you to organise and secure yourself.
Yeah. And just to add to that, Nicola's just shared a link for our SQE information group where we do share opportunities that we're aware of. We will post them in there, but it's up to you guys to obviously apply and then secure the role. But it would be worth joining that on LinkedIn if you're wanting to stay up to date on opportunities and also course information. And on the qualifying work experience note, we do actually have a work experience panel webinar coming up. It isn't live yet. We are still in the works of setting it up and in the planning stages. But once that is live and people are able to register, we will be posting that in our SQE information group as well. Or you can find all webinars that we're hosting on our events section once they're uploaded. So if people's main concerns are the qualifying work experience or training contract elements, it might be worth you coming along and attending that so that you can hear what the panel have got to say. But on that note, we are going to end it there. Kathryn, thank you so much for attending and spreading your knowledge. You were fantastic as per. And Nicola, thank you for working in the background and posting all of the useful links. Again, just a quick reminder, you'll receive an email from us within the next week with the recording and also the slides. If you want to book in a chat, by all means do. We'd love to hear from you. But thank you so much and everyone have a great evening.